There is a hand in the dust, not a king's hand, not a conqueror's, just the weathered fingers of someone whose name has been erased by 10,000 years, pressing seeds into damp soil beneath a pale morning sky. The earth is cold. The air carries the scent of wild grass. Behind them, children sleep beneath woven shelters. Nearby, smoke rises from dying embers. A dog lifts its head for a moment, then settles again. The person kneels, presses another seed into the ground, and then another. It looks ordinary, small, forgettable. A gesture repeated millions of times in gardens and farms across the modern world. But in that movement, fingers disappearing into soil, human history quietly changed direction. Because that hand may have been planting more than grain. It may have been planting civilization itself, and perhaps, at the same time, planting the first roots of a crisis from which humanity has never entirely escaped. Most people think agriculture was humanity's greatest invention. A breakthrough, a triumph of intelligence over uncertainty. The moment our ancestors stopped wandering and finally learned how to build the world we now inhabit. That is the story we inherit. It is neat, comforting, progressive. It moves in a straight line. Hunters become farmers. Farmers build cities. Cities create civilization. Civilization creates us. But history rarely moves in straight lines. And when archaeologists began looking closely at the evidence buried beneath ancient settlements scattered across Southwest Asia, something unsettling emerged. The first farmers did not immediately become healthier. They did not become freer, and they did not necessarily choose their agriculture because life had improved. The transition appeared less like a celebration and more like an adaptation under pressure. Something had gone wrong. To understand why, we must return to a landscape unlike the one we know today, long before borders divided nations, before roads carved through deserts and pipelines crossed ancient ground. A broad arc of land stretched from the eastern Mediterranean through northern Mesopotamia and toward the Persian Gulf. Later, historians would call it the Fertile Crescent. The name evokes abundance, and for thousands of years, abundance was exactly what it offered. Wild wheat swayed across open hillsides, barley flourished, gazelle migrated in enormous herds, rivers flooded predictably, fig trees spread their branches beneath a forgiving climate. To modernize, it resembles the opening scene of civilization. To those living there, it was simply home. And for an astonishing length of time, that home asked very little in return. The people of the Fertile Crescent were not primitive survivors trapped in endless desperation. This assumption has proven remarkably persistent. It is also deeply misleading. Hunter-gatherers possessed intimate ecological knowledge accumulated over generations. They understood migration routes, seasonal cycles, medicinal plants, animal behavior. They adapted with flexibility rather than domination. Archaeological evidence suggests many communities enjoyed varied diets, rich in nutrients gathered from dozens of different sources. Work rhythms shifted with seasons rather than clocks. Mobility functioned as resilience. If resources declined in one area, people moved. Their security emerged from adaptability. Then the climate changed. At first, almost imperceptibly. A shift in rainfall, a subtle cooling, small alterations in growing seasons. The end of the last ice age had transformed the planet into a warmer world. But around 12,900 years ago, something unexpected interrupted that trajectory. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to colder conditions. The causes remain debated. Some researchers point toward disruptions in ocean circulation. Others investigate extraterrestrial hypotheses. The data continues to evolve, but for those living through it, Explanations mattered less than consequences. Rainfall patterns altered. Wild stands of grain became less predictable. Animals changed migration behaviors. Reliable landscapes began behaving unpredictably, and unpredictability has always frightened the human mind. Because the brain evolved to anticipate tomorrow. When tomorrow becomes uncertain, psychology changes. Scarcity does not simply threaten the body, it reorganizes thought itself. Communities that once relied upon mobility faced difficult decisions. Move farther, compete harder, adapt differently. In several regions of the Fertile Crescent, people appear to have done something extraordinary. They stayed. The choice seems obvious now. It was anything but obvious then. Remaining in place required commitment, observation, experimentation, failure. Perhaps someone noticed seeds falling near campsites and sprouting months later. Perhaps women gathering grains recognized which stalks held larger kernels. Perhaps generations contributed fragments of understanding too small to notice individually. Human revolutions often begin this way, not with revelation, but repetition. Tiny decisions accumulating until they alter reality. Plant the larger seeds, return to productive patches, clear competing vegetation, protect useful plants. Wait, observe, repeat. Agriculture was not invented in a moment. It emerged gradually from thousands of interactions between human attention and living ecosystems. Yet, something strange happened. The more humans shaped these plants, the more these plants shaped humans. Wild wheat naturally disperses its seeds. A brittle stem breaks. The grain scatters. The plant reproduces independently. But early farmers favored stalks that retained their seeds until harvest. Those plants depended increasingly upon human intervention. Humans domesticated wheat. Wheat domesticated human schedules. Fields demanded presence. Timing mattered. Missing harvest could mean catastrophe. Mobility became risk. Settlement became necessity. For perhaps the first time in our species' history, large numbers of people organized life around the biological needs of another organism. Not predator, not prey, grass. Civilization, in one interpretation, began with an agreement between ape and grain, and agreements always have costs. The skeletons tell part of the story. Researchers examining early agricultural communities discovered evidence that challenged traditional assumptions about progress. Average height declined. Indicators of nutritional stress increased. Dental disease became more common. Populations relying heavily upon cultivated cereals often consumed less diverse diets than their foraging predecessors. Life expectancy did not immediately improve. Workloads intensified. The irony is difficult to ignore. Humanity gained greater control over food production. Many humans became less healthy. Most people imagine progress as liberation from hardship. The archaeological record suggests another possibility. Progress sometimes redistributes hardship into new forms. Fields had to be planted, weeds removed, harvests processed, grain stored, infrastructure maintained. Children could contribute labor. Larger families became advantageous. Population increased, and population transformed everything. Because agriculture produced a paradox. Individual lives often grew more demanding. Collective societies became more powerful. Stored food created surplus. Surplus created specialization. Specialization created hierarchy. Some people managed storage, others coordinated labor. Authority emerged not merely through violence, but through administration. Who counts the grain? Who distributes shortages? Who decides ownership? Questions once irrelevant to mobile groups acquired enormous significance. The architecture of inequality may have begun inside storage rooms. Walls appeared, boundaries mattered, land acquired permanence, inheritance became meaningful. If mobility characterized the psychology of foragers, permanence reshaped the psychology of farmers. The future extended further. Anxiety followed. A failed hunt is immediate. A failed harvest threatens months. People began investing labor into outcomes they could not yet see. Hope became seasonal. Fear became seasonal. Entire emotional calendars emerged from the rhythms of planting and drought. Religion transformed alongside them. Ancient shrines expanded. Rituals intensified. Communities sought negotiation with forces beyond their control. Rain, flood, fertility, death. The gods of agricultural societies often governed cycles humans desperately needed to predict. Faith did not eliminate uncertainty. It offered structure within uncertainty. Civilization is sometimes described as humanity's conquest of nature. But standing inside the Fertile Crescent, 10,000 years ago, conquest would have been an unfamiliar word. Dependence would have felt more accurate. A fungus could destroy harvests. A river could flood too little. A season could arrive too soon. The entire machinery of settled existence balanced upon ecological stability that no human truly commanded. The illusion of control expanded precisely because vulnerability deepened. This pattern echoes through history. Cities rose, writing emerged. Trade routes expanded across continents. Mathematics evolved, laws formed. Empires assembled themselves from organized abundance. The achievements remain extraordinary. Yet, beneath marble temples and administrative records lingered the original bargain. Keep the harvest alive. Everything else depends on it. Even now, thousands of years later, modern civilization remains tethered to that ancient agreement. Our technologies appear limitless. Our cities glitter against the night. Satellites circle the planet. Artificial intelligence analyzes data faster than any human mind. And still, weather forecasts shape economies. Drought destabilizes nations. Crop failures ripple through markets. Supply chains tremble when ecosystems falter. We have complicated the bargain. We have never escaped it. Perhaps the deepest revelation of the Fertile Crescent. Crisis is not that agriculture was a mistake. History is rarely so simple. Without agriculture, there may have been no literature, no astronomy, no medicine, no architecture reaching toward heaven, no science capable of reconstructing its own origins. The question is more uncomfortable than that. What if every solution creates new vulnerabilities? What if adaptation is not escape, but exchange? Security traded for dependence, freedom traded for stability, flexibility traded for scale. Human beings excel at solving problems. We are less skilled at recognizing the problems our solutions inevitably produce. 10,000 years ago, a hand pressed seeds into the earth. The gesture promised tomorrow. Food, continuity, possibility. It also invited responsibility, measured not in days, but in generations. Perhaps this is the hidden rhythm beneath all civilization. Not triumph, not failure. Negotiation. An endless conversation between human ambition and the systems that sustain it. We inherit both the harvest and the burden. And maybe that is the unsettling truth history offers. The story of agriculture is not the story of how humanity separated itself from nature. It is the story of how deeply entangled we became. Because beneath every skyscraper, every government, every market, every machine sophisticated enough to imagine leaving this planet, there remains an ancient memory embedded within our species. A hand, a seed, a season that may or may not arrive as expected, and the quiet understanding that civilization itself has always been an act of faith. The belief that if we prepare carefully enough today, the earth will answer us tomorrow. It usually does, until occasionally it doesn't. And in that fragile space between expectation and uncertainty, humanity has always lived.